Hey, did you know that Tennessee recently passed legislation that prohibits anyone except for birth parents from signing off on common vaccinations? I'm going to be making a video breaking down some of the reasons that some parents are for this new legislation and some reasons that I, along with many others, am against it. The title of the article that caught my attention is, as you can see, Tennessee Vaccine Law Pits Parental Rights Against Public Health. And as someone who wants to have children in the future, I found this title to be concerning. I read more into it, and I found that there are children who can't get vaccinated for something as simple as the flu because of this new legislation. Now, quite frankly, it's not like this legislation is completely out of nowhere, and it's not like the intent of it was because we didn't want people to get vaccinated. It was because of the 1918 influenza pandemic when vaccines were not nearly as safe as they were today. And states have always tried to avoid vaccination mandates. Like in this quote from Donald Trump, "I will not give one penny to any school that has a vaccination mandate." Though recent studies have shown that vaccines are rather safe nowadays and safe enough to give to small children, which is mainly the concern of my essay. Though I don't think the health concerns were the main reason legislation made it through. Because if you read here, it says, by the time the two state legislators introduced a bill to reverse the mature minor doctrine, which allowed people to sign off on their own vaccines, children to sign off on their own vaccines, the health department was silent on the proposal, as someone in their high-ranking seats was already fired over vaccine promotion for COVID. Now, notably, the legislator who introduced the bill, Republican John Reagan, was amongst those simultaneously overseeing a review of the agency that would determine its leadership and budget for the coming years. Children belong to their families, not the state, said Reagan as he presented a bill at the state hearing. Though Pearson spoke out against the bill. It doesn't take into account people and children who are neglected, he told Reagan. We're legislating from a point of privilege and not recognizing the people who are not privileged in this way. And I guess that must have really struck a nerve with him, because to address these concerns, he referenced a Supreme Court ruling in favor of parental rights in 2000 as precedent. And, this was okay about a mother having legal authority to decide who can visit her daughters. And at the same time, the Supreme Court has also voted against parental rights when it talked about a woman who wanted to take her children out of school, or her child out of school, for religious reasons. Though, regardless, it still went through. And the unfortunate thing about this, though, is as soon as this bill was signed, Deborah Lowen, the commissioner of the Child Health Department of Children's Services, was flooded with calls from doctors who now face jail time and fines for vaccinating minors without adequate consent. I feel like this probably should have had better rules, or could have been written better, but honestly, I feel like it should just not have made it through at all. So, moving on to my next source here, I have the list of diseases and vaccines that prevent them that you should give to your child, and I looked through a lot of the long-term effects that most of these have, and a lot of them lead to either worsening conditions or death. And I feel like we should be avoiding death more carefully by making sure that more people have access to sign off on these vaccinations, which are safe to give to children. And, here we have another source that mostly quotes as to why parents are refusing vaccinations for their kids, and it's concerns about safety. And do you want to know where most of these concerns came from? Well, it's either through media or acquaintances, and it's said here again through a study. Parents had refused vaccines because of other people, or media reports. This is an article discussing reasons that parents actually don't get their child vaccinated, and in its defense, it did have one good reason, and it's that children might be allergic to the vaccinations or incapable of taking them without the side effects being too much for them. And that's fine, but we should not have legislation in favor of the minority instead of the majority. Back to the main point, though. I know that West Virginia, who was also mentioned in the article, has a terrible habit of following suit when it comes to making laws, and I want the person watching this to know that this legislation wasn't for the betterment of Tennessee, it won't be for the betterment of West Virginia, and it's definitely not for the betterment of the United States of America. This It's a net loss for foster children, or children in the middle of the adoption process, or even children who are neglected or abused by their parents. This legislation was made from a point of privilege and is actively neglecting the people in need in the United States. It's focused on the minority instead of the majority, and it shouldn't make it out of Tennessee, and in fact, it should be removed in general. Thank you for watching.